Well, I thought I'd pop over and visit my friend Steve, but he's not very well. Look at you, Steve. You're in your bathrobe. What's going on?
I've been feeling a bit ill, so I'm self-isolating. It gives me a chance to catch up on episodes of Ralph's House.
Yes, welcome back on this splendid Sunday. So, what are we doing here today? Not a lot, Sundays are what they are, but I'm going to do some things that take a while to dry. Remember I filled this area down here, sanded that off early this morning and put some lining paper over it. The wall's pretty smooth actually, but if you line it, it makes a much nicer surface all round, to be honest. So give that till tomorrow and I can get all that painted around there. I shall continue this morning sanding the skirting down, getting the primer undercoat on. Need to get it all the way around really. So I need my extension lead up here because with all the will in the world, my sander hasn't got that long a cable. I've been round and sanded all the skirting. Gonna give a key for the primer undercoat. And we'll whiz around that. I've just got to pick up all these bits of paper and brick dust and give it a good hoover around the edge, make sure there's no dust on top of the skirting and get it painted. I suppose there's a sort of satisfaction in painting skirting. And lucky because the primer undercoat, which is what this is, Aldi Special, it's very good. Because it's the same colour as the walls, that means I can get that join really nice. Fill any little slight imperfections as I go. Paint guard's quite good as well. Not that I haven't got paint on the floor, I have, but at least you don't get quite so much. All I remember about glossing and primer undercoating is that you keep painting back towards the wet bit that you've already done. Probably lose that. Yeah, lost it in the paint. That's good. This particular wall's going to get wallpapered, so I want a reasonably good line across the bottom. And my paint guard. And if you're wondering why I'm painting primer undercoat out of a roller tray, that's because, I don't know, a week or a couple of weeks ago, I fell over on the landing, you know, cartoon fashion, landed on a tin of paint, which promptly split, and there I was thinking, now what do I do? Because the paint oozed across the landing. So I managed to get it all in a roller tray, covered it with a bin bag, and it's been fine. Yeah, oh, now we're getting to that interesting bit, because that's the bit with that new bit of skirting on. Alright, let's whip round there. Yeah, I've been asked a few questions, not just about Ralph's house, but you know, about Ralph in general. What do you do, Ralph? You know, what do you do for a living? Well, I don't at the moment because I was made redundant. But my approach in my working life It's been somewhat unorthodox. Now I remember when I was younger, my dad said, you know, get a trade, get a trade. And I suppose there's some truth in that. You know, if you're trained to be an electrician, something like that, you're always going to be gainfully employed, that's for sure. I started in the print trade when I was about 16, 17, something like that. And I worked for a company called Maisey Kennard in Leamington Spa. It was my first ever real job, paying the princely sum of, I think, something like £17 a week. So that would have been in about 1977. And I remember seeing the job coming up in the local paper, and it's good advice for anybody that's certainly if you're young and looking for work, do your homework. So what I did, I went to the library the night before. My sister will probably remember this, and I got a book on printing because I really wanted this job. And when I got to the interview, I think his name was Jeff. There were 3 partners that ran Maisey Kennard. I think 2 of them have since died. I would think so. They were getting on a bit when I worked there. Anyway, I went for the interview and he said, well, what do you know about printing then? So I straight away said, what type? He said, well, lithography. So I reeled off all this stuff I knew about lithography and how you made the plates up and the ink stuck to part of the plate. And he said, stop. He said, I've got another 5 to see next week. He said, you start Monday. So that's how I got into the print trade. And but I'm also a trained journalist, radio presenter, videographer, made various documentaries for local authorities, that sort of thing, which I could still do, I guess. So yeah, my life's been a somewhat checkered one, but you know, I've been happy doing it. So yes, you kind of, well, you don't always choose your lifestyle, but I suppose I did. I didn't have a particularly good start at home. I think that probably set me back somewhat. Anyway, worked for Maisey Kennard for a couple of years. And a big company called Edwards the Printers. Huge place. No more, of course, you know. Can't see the writing on the wall with the print industry. And my first experience ever of a closed shop. That came as a shock. And you know, whilst I'm a big admirer of what the unions did, you know, we wouldn't have all these annual holidays and bits and pieces working out for the unions. That's a fact. You'd be working round the clock. Yeah, it was a bit strange when, well, you can't do that. If you do that, we'll have to call the shop steward and then we'll all be out, you know. So that came as a bit of a shock in my working life. So, I've just decided I'd had enough, I think. Things just weren't right, you know, and so if I remember rightly, I bought a 4-man tent. Let's move my plastic shielding. Otherwise we'll be picking up dust. Bought a 4-man tent and hitched my way south. I don't know really what I was looking for, but I suppose, you know, I was kind of young. Lived on Brighton Golf Course in the winter, deep snow. I don't know, for about 4 months, something like that. And no money, no food. Used to have to, terrible admission, but I used to go down to the town early morning, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning when the bread delivery vans had been mine. Pinch the bread and the milk just so I could survive. And then got a job briefly through somebody I knew in the town, and it was kind of like a hotel manager's job, but it soon became clear that this guy was a bit of a gangster, and I ended up running suitcases of money in and out of London. And I never did ask what it was about, and I didn't want to know. But anyway, he sent me on it. He was a bit of a religious fella. It doesn't stack up, does it really? But anyway, he sent me away on this 2-week religious convention thing that was at Butlins in Clacton. Well, I wasn't so much interested in that aspect, but I got friendly with some of the waiters and didn't come back. So consequently, because I've had such an odd life and far too much to tell you here, I suppose in more recent years I became a writer. But my son and my girlfriend and my former PE teacher, George Grundy, said you should write a book, Ralph. And I have actually started on it, yeah. So I'll let you know if it goes to print. But yeah, interesting life. And a lot of it, even my family don't know. So yeah, it should make for an interesting book. The difficult bit is knowing what to leave in and what to leave out, isn't it, really? Or whether you go for a warts and all, or whether you go for the highlights, or just the amusing bits, or how you approach it. But I've kind of jumped in somewhere in the middle. That seems to be the way to go. Right, I'm just going to finish that. Anyway, while I was working at Butlins, as a waiter, you know, it's summer season, and I'm not saying I did much of that, but most of the lads, you know, were always on the pull on the Saturday night, because that was when all the new campers came in. And if you weren't doing that, you were cadging beers from people you were serving on tables. Anyway, this was at Clacton, outside the Gaiety Theatre, as it was called then. And there was this girl working inside this booth selling tickets. And I walked past and I thought, that is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. And I didn't see her for a couple of years after that. I used to see her on odd times on the camp. And cut a long story short, we sort of ended up an item for a while, and through no fault of either of us really, we ended up splitting up. And you know, I've been married twice, and she's been married. And one day I just thought, well, I'll look her up, see if I can find her again, you know. I looked her up on Facebook, and we met up. Blow me, we've been an item ever since. So there you go, that's how that happened. Right, I'm just going to finish that last bit. Yes, that's good. That's a whole lot better. Yeah, of course, don't worry about the floor, because carpet's going on that anyway. But yeah, that's all well and good. All good round there. And right under the skirting, in case my other half asks, and I just primered and undercoated the wall above it, so I couldn't get in there for paper. If anybody really does lie on their belly to look underneath my radiator, they'll be disappointed. It's painted under there. So yeah, I'm going to let that go off today, and I'll come round and put a top coat on tomorrow. I'll just check around and make sure there's nothing wants sanding, but I think it looks pretty neat, doesn't it? Yeah, tidy. Right, so that'll do for today. This is like a 3-day video. I'm doing sort of little bits and pieces, and get all that done tomorrow, and we'll see what else we'll be doing in the morning. Alright, so that'll do for today. Well, that's all the skirting done. I shall leave that now for the rest of the day to dry, so I can come round tomorrow and put the top coat on. That dries very quick, that top coat actually. So does this, to be honest. But yeah, nice neat edges everywhere. Best as I can do. It's staggering with this wall in particular because if you remember my earlier videos, there were cupboards here, there was an immersion tank in here, there was a sort of an overflow tank on 2 brackets up here. Not a trace of it, all gone. All the plaster was crazed, you know. I was a bit worried that I was going to have to replaster it, and I didn't. I used the old PVA to stabilise it all, because it hadn't actually blown, it was adhered to the wall, and just filled the cracks up, spent time on it, several coats of emulsion, beautifully flat wall, and that's all ready to be papered. Not tomorrow, but the day afterwards I should be putting the feature paper on this wall. So anyway, that's it from Ralph's house today. Thumbs up, thumbs down, leave a comment. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.